معنا نهج حياة جئنا تبصرة عن كل ضلال أعددنا بضع رسالات تحمل نورا للأجيال.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I welcome all of you to this bite-size episode in which we'll be looking at some of the fiqh pertaining to those things which invalidate the fast and things which cause a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of controversy about certain modern issues. So the first thing to remember is that a fast is only broken when someone actually does something which invalidates the fast. What I mean by this is that there has to be some action which takes place. If one was just merely to make an intention of breaking the fast, then just making an intention to break the fast actually does not invalidate the fast. Even if someone went as far as picking some item of food up or a glass of water and didn't actually drink the water, didn't consume the food, it would not break the person's fast. There are certain things which will break the fast and they will make qada wajib. Qada, i.e. to make up the fast, and other violators and nullifiers are those things which make qada and compensation kafara wajib also. So I want to look at those things which make qada and kafara compensation wajib first. If someone was to have intercourse with their spouse during Ramadan, in the day of Ramadan, during the fast, then this would not only mean qada, making up the fast, but also kafara. And this kafara is firstly to free a slave, but obviously that's not going to happen in this modern day and age. So we move on to the next thing which is mentioned as kafara, which is to fast for 60 consecutive days. And they have to be consecutive. There cannot be another Ramadan in the middle, nor can there be any of those days on which fasting is not permissible, i.e. the days of Eid. So these 60 days are a kafara, 60 consecutive days. If, however, one was unable to fast for 60 consecutive days, unable here does not mean someone just didn't want to or didn't fancy fasting for 60 days. It means actually medically where it's going to cause serious distress or serious harm to the body. Only then can the person move on to the next option, which is to feed 60 people or one person, one poor person, one miskeen for the duration of 60 days. Remembering that intercourse occurring doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be ejaculation to make the kafara wajib. Just the meeting of the private parts, intercourse occurring, will make the kafara wajib. The obvious things which invalidate the fast are eating and drinking things which are known to be items of food or items of drink. If one was to drink deliberately or eat food deliberately or have some medication deliberately, then this also necessitates qada and kafara, both. Not just qada, not just making up the fast, but kafara, as I've just mentioned before, is 60 days consecutive fasting. So these are those things which make qada and kafara wajib. Now on to those things which make qada wajib but don't actually make kafara wajib. If one was to touch their spouse and this caused discharge, or they were to kiss their spouse and this caused discharge, then this doesn't make compensation kafara, but only qada is wajib in this case. Another situation is when a person accidentally, khata'an, he or she drinks some water. For example, someone was doing wudu and they gargled kulli excessively and water actually went into their throat. This would invalidate the fast. But again, like I mentioned before, it does not make kafara wajib on that person. In the traditional fiqh books, we find that the scholars have written that if one was to put water or any liquid into his or her ears, then this would invalidate the fast, because previously the fuqaha, the jurists, they believed that there was a passage, a route which went from the ears to the throat and hence into the stomach. But modern scientific research backs the fact that there is no passage between the ears and the throat. And contrary to what we find in the fiqh books, the fuqaha write that if one was to put anything in the eyes, like eye drops or anything, any medication from the eyes, this would not invalidate the fast. However, modern science has shown that there is actually a passage which goes from the eyes to the throat. So based on this modern research, the scholars of nowadays, those reliable scholars that we depend on here at Suffa-Tul-Islam, and many people rely on these great scholars, the modern day fuqaha, they write that if one was to use eye drops or put any medication in the eyes, then this would invalidate the fast. And contrary to what you will find in traditional fiqh books, that putting medication and water in the ears, according to them, would invalidate the fast, but according to modern research, this would not invalidate the fast. So that's something to note, that something that goes in the eyes does, and something which goes in the ears does not invalidate the fast. Now we come on to some modern issues that you will not find in the traditional fiqh books. Things like injections. Now injections, the scholars have differed in their opinions, but again, those scholars that we rely upon, our mashayikh, our great shaykh here at Suffa-Tul-Islam, and other great scholars, those that Hazrat Sahib rely upon, their own teachers, their own mashayikh, what they believe is that injections do invalidate the fast. Remember, there is no kafara here, only qada for that fast. Other things which are to do with modern fiqh about fasting, things like cigarettes, e-cigarettes, nicotine patches and shisha pens, all these modern things which I'm not discussing the permissibility of these things or otherwise in this episode, but people do have this habit of using these things. These things do invalidate the fast and make qada lazim and important. Moving on to the next thing, which is inhalers. Now some people are asthmatics and need to use inhalers. Again, the research of the scholars, again those that we rely upon here at Suffa-Tul-Islam, those scholars that we depend upon, they inform us and tell us that inhalers do actually invalidate the fast. And this is based on scientific research which tells us that there are vapors inside the inhaler which actually will reach the stomach in the form of a liquid, therefore invalidating the fast. Another inappropriate practice which is common amongst people is the practice of masturbation. If one did masturbate and this led to ejaculation, this would again make qada lazim. However, there would be no kafara. Again, this is not an appropriate behavior, but if one was to make this practice during his fast, then this is the ruling and verdict regarding this. Another invalidator is if one was to wake up late for sehri and the time of fajr had started and they took their sehri later than the scheduled and appropriate time, this would again invalidate the fast. Likewise, if one was to have their iftari at the time before Maghrib, it was still Asr time, so they were early for their iftari, thinking that they had entered into Maghrib time, again this would invalidate their fast and qada would be lazim and there would be no kafara in both cases. Another key thing that we must bear in mind, that if we did invalidate our fast for whatever reason, it doesn't mean that for the rest of the day that we eat and drink like normal in public, in front of people. But the correct etiquette and adab and respect for the day of Ramadan is that a person abstains from eating and drinking from the rest of the day, and they behave as if they are fasting. Only for those people who are excused because of some legitimate a valid Shari'i reason that they are exempt from fasting, for those people they are allowed to eat and drink, but again they have to try and make sure that this is not done in public. They must hide their meals and be away from people. If one was to unintentionally vomit, then this would not break their fast, even if the vomit was abundant. Another important thing to bear in mind is sometimes after Sahri we may have pieces of meat or food stuck in the teeth. Then if a person was to swallow any of these pieces and altogether this amounted to more than the size of a chickpea, that this would invalidate the fast. However, if it was less than the size of a chickpea, the amount that was swallowed, then this would not invalidate the fast. Jazakallah khair for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
معنا نهج حياة جئنا تبصرة عن كل ضلال أعددنا بضع رسالات تحمل نورا للأجيال.